Alright, what's going on everybody? Welcome back to another video here on the channel, and today we're going to be talking about the breaking news out of the Middle East. Now, a few days ago, I made a video talking about how the United States had directly gotten involved in the conflict in Iran by bombing 3 nuclear sites that were key to the Iranian regime. Israeli intelligence claimed that they were trying to make nuclear devices and were capable of doing so within a matter of a few weeks. So before the US actually bombed these facilities, Israel and Iran had already been in a conflict for days at that point, lobbing missiles at one another. But as this has all kind of developed, and I've been covering it here on the channel, there has been a pretty consistent theme, and that theme is worrying about potential escalation in this conflict, especially now that the United States had done their bombings, basically, and being concerned because, as we all knew from not only just common sense, but also from the warnings that were issued by the Iranian regime, if the United States bombed Iran's nuclear facilities, they were going to retaliate by striking US bases directly, and that would obviously risk a spillover conflict because the United States, if we were to have our bases bombed and any soldiers were killed or whatever, we obviously were going to retaliate once more, and we were going to escalate it significantly compared to just bombing the nuclear facilities. Well, today, that day came. Iran has officially and finally responded to the United States' bombing, and they have carried out an attack at least on 2 US bases. There are also reports that missiles were launched at US bases in at least 4 different countries, including Qatar, Bahrain, Kuwait, and Iraq. So as of right now, we do know that the base in Qatar, which is basically like the headquarters for US CENTCOM, it's one of the biggest US military assets in the region. It had 6 Iranian missiles fired at it. There was video that went around on social media as all of this was going on, showing US Patriot interceptor systems basically shooting missiles at these incoming missiles. Apparently, according to the reports, all 6 of the missiles incoming from Iran were intercepted successfully by US forces. As it seems right now, at least from the initial reports, there are no US casualties on these strikes in the bases and whatnot by Iran, so that is at least a shred of good news, because I've been worried, I'm sure many of you have also been worried, that when these strikes were going to be carried out by Iran, if they obviously killed any Americans or did enough damage or whatever, there was going to be a significant escalation and probably at that point a full-out war between the United States and Iran. So as of right now, it looks like the worst has been spared, and even now there is reports suggesting that up to 12 hours before they launched the missiles at the US base in Qatar, the Iranians had given the Qataris some like 12-hour advance, basically, that they were going to be bombing that US facility. Also notably, that facility the United States anticipated would be the target of any retaliatory strikes due to its importance in the region. So a lot of the aircraft and a lot of the like US military weapons and hardware and whatnot, and some of the personnel were actually removed from that facility days in advance. So a lot of people are saying, oh, you know, Iran struck an empty facility. Well, as it appears, none of the missiles actually made it through. That may be subject to change. I'm obviously basing all of this off the initial information that we're getting. It's been about 2 hours or so since these attacks began from the Iranians, and so I gave it a little bit more time. I recorded the first draft of this video kind of as it was happening, but obviously when I was recording that, we didn't have any sort of like verification of hits. We didn't know if the missiles had been intercepted. We didn't know all and how many bases were affected. We didn't know casualties, anything like that. So as of right now, it does appear that the good news on the table for everybody here is that US forces were not killed. It looks like, honestly, kind of like what happened in 2020. I made a video talking about this way back in the first Trump presidency, but Trump carried out an airstrike against Qasem Soleimani, I believe was his name. He was the guy like in control of their military or whatever, and Trump actually killed this guy in an airstrike, and at the time, Iran responded by firing a barrage of missiles at a US base. No American servicemen were killed in that attack either, and there was like a prior advance notice given that the missiles were incoming. So it seems like Iran kind of has this strategy, right, where obviously the United States antagonizes them with the bombing, right? They go in, they bomb their nuclear facilities. It's a very clear and cut attack. I mean, if any country flew bombers into the US and hit our infrastructure, we would call for a declaration of war. And so we bombed these facilities. We did what Israel wanted us to do. We helped Israel carry out one of their objectives in striking Iran in the first place. We apparently win because we've been saying that Iran can't have a nuclear bomb. So we get a shot at their nuclear facilities, and they obviously were going to respond. And they did basically what they did back in the day where, you know, they give advance notice and they shoot the missiles at the base, but not in a spot where it's going to hit any like American like faculty or servicemen or anything like that. Because obviously Iran isn't fucking stupid. Like, I know a lot of people think that Iran, you know, how dumb can they be to keep trying to mess with the US or whatever, but they honestly know exactly what they're doing, because Iran knows just as well as anybody that if they, you know, they send a missile in and they kill 70 American soldiers in a barracks, Trump and the US military are going to bomb the ever-living fuck out of Iran. I mean, we know that that's going to happen. Trump is not bluffing when he says that. This is the same guy, like I said, he airstriked one of their head generals. He just flew B-2 stealth bombers in and bombed their nuclear facilities with bunker-busting munitions. He has openly threatened or hinted at the possibility of killing, you know, the supreme leader of Iran and other people in important positions in the country. Iran isn't stupid. They know that if they go and they fuck up like this and they kill some Americans, we're coming back in, we're taking out the military facilities, we're probably killing the supreme leader, we're probably killing any leadership left in the military, and we're blowing up any capability that they have to respond with missiles, right? So they know how to play their cards the smart way if they don't want to get completely annihilated. Now, the concern with all of this was very obvious, but thankfully it looks like we're spared from the worst in all of this. Now, if it did get to that point, or God forbid it still does, because there still is other stuff that could escalate this going on, but if it did, it would be a lot harder than people think to actually get this situation under control. I know a lot of people, you know, they're patriotic, they love America. I do too, trust me. I believe in the armed forces and whatnot as well. But ultimately, Iran is a country with 1 million soldiers. They have thousands of missiles. They have ballistic missiles that they obviously can use to strike targets legitimately. They've hit Tel Aviv, they've hit Haifa, they've hit Israeli targets. They can hit US bases, at least in some instances. They're not just like some pushover, you know what I mean? Like, if they really wanted to fight against the US, they could make it very hard. But the thing with Iran is even if they don't have direct military support from Russia right now, or China, or any of their other like allies or whatever, Iran is still operating the axis of resistance proxies, where they have people like Hezbollah and the Houthis and these other groups across the Middle East that are capable of harassing the US, and realistically not even just harassing us, but if we were to get into a prolonged conflict, they would be able to distract the US in a way, because, you know, they would be messing with us in the Red Sea, they'd be messing with us out of like Iraq and Syria. We're already trying to deal with the Houthis. We've been bombing them for trying to disrupt the US and shooting shit at our ships and whatnot. And these aren't small groups. I mean, if you combine all of these proxy networks up, they have a, you know, soldier base of possibly up to 200,000 soldiers all combined. So it wouldn't just be something where, you know, the US goes in and in 1 week we're out, right? It would be a pretty significant conflict. It would be a lot different than Iraq and Afghanistan and all these other conflicts that we've been in over time. This wouldn't just be something so simple, right? And like I've said in all of these videos, even one US serviceman dying over all of this, in my opinion, is not worth it, because we've already been involved in this shit for decades. And that's been everybody's primary concern is, are Americans gonna die because of this? Or are we gonna wrap our country up in another Middle Eastern forever war? So right now, at least off the preliminary information, I don't know if President Trump is going to authorize any response. Now, one thing that could still happen that has been floated by Iran is they use their Navy assets to close the Strait of Hormuz, which is a strategic geopolitical area where a lot of the world's oil supply and trade and global commerce goes through, and Iran could basically effectively blockade this, and by doing so, they could massively disrupt everything going on probably spike the price of oil pretty significantly. And honestly, if they do end up doing that, the United States is probably going to respond, I feel like, because at that point, they're just like basically trying to sabotage the global economy and whatnot. I really don't think they would just kind of allow that to happen. I figure there would probably be a pretty significant response if that does go down. As of right now, that hasn't happened, but I mean, like I said, we're gonna have to wait and really kind of see what's going on here, because if they do end up doing that, I mean, this whole thing could unfortunately escalate once again. But President Trump did issue an announcement over the last few days where he said if Iran retaliated for the strikes that happened against their nuclear sites, the United States would basically, after they respond, we would retaliate again in a much greater magnitude. We would cause more damage. It would be more destructive, whatnot. So I guess we'll have to wait and see. President Trump, as we do understand it, has called a meeting together in the Situation Room. That was while this was all kind of going on live. So I'm assuming that he obviously is going to get information faster than we're all going to get it. And he's probably been making decisions on the next steps, at least from the Situation Room. So who knows where this is going to go from here, but it is at least semi-positive that no American soldiers were harmed or killed or whatever, because that would have basically been an immediate escalation of the conflict to the point where the US probably goes outright to war. I mean, we're not just going to let that happen, right? They're not just going to let a bunch of people get bombed and killed and not respond. I mean, we probably would have been hitting military sites. We probably would have killed the supreme leader, all these different things, which that is also still being floated as a possibility. Israel has encouraged it. Trump made a vague change about regime change, or a vague comment about regime change the other day. He has also hinted that we have not taken it off the table to kill the supreme leader of Iran. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. But as of right now, that's kind of the update on the whole situation. So thank you guys for watching. If you did enjoy, make sure to leave a like. Subscribe if you're brand new around here on the channel. Follow me over on Twitter and Twitch at @SubToOptimus. Make sure to check out Shoptimus down below. Thank you to my Watch Optimus subscribers. Your support helps the channel tremendously. And until my next video, guys, this is Optimus talking about the Iranian response and signing out.